11 December 1944. Adlerhorst near Ziegenberg. Fluorescent lights hum above a concrete corridor as field marshals press their shoulders to the wall and raise their hands. Pistols vanish into SS coats, briefcases are stripped open, and the men who command the West stare straight ahead. Inside the map room, Hitler jabs Antwerp with a ruler and calls the Americans soft. Von Manteuffel keeps his face still and says nothing. He has watched American infantry hold roadblocks until they are down to their last clip. By the end, you'll hear how Germany's senior commanders truly ranked the Allied leaders, from the easiest to beat to the ones who kept them awake. If you want enemy eyes on Allied generals without myth or mercy, subscribe and stay with me through the last verdict. The ranking tightens with every mile of winter road. Those searched officers led the Western Theater. Von Rundstedt held OB West, an old professional forced to serve a gambler. Model ran Army Group B, the firemen, who sealed fronts with scraps and orders barked on the move. Manteuffel had 5th Panzer Army, a creative armor commander who preferred finesse to frontal weight. The plan he heard was simple on paper and brutal in practice. Wacht am Rhein would stab through the Ardennes, split the British and Americans, and seize Antwerp to choke Allied supply. 6th Panzer Army would push in the north, 5th Panzer Army in the center, and 7th Army would guard the southern flank. For months before this moment, the German gaze had drifted. Their intelligence shops compiled profiles on the leaders they expected to face regularly. Eisenhower sat atop the stack as coalition boss. Montgomery drew long assessments for his deliberate style. Bradley had a growing file as the Americans' methodical field leader. Patton, at that point, did not fill many pages. Before August 1944, his name barely registered in their operational summaries, even as deception units painted him as a looming threat along the Pas-de-Calais coast. Operation Fortitude had thrown shadows on the wall, and German staffs argued over which ones were real. Judgment in war ran on heuristics, not hero worship. German officers graded opponents by predictability, by how fast they repaired a front, by whether they telegraphed blows with logistics. They weighed who gambled, who massed, and who listened to the system behind them. At the bottom of their list sat Mark Clark. 5th Army's push out of Anzio gave them a case study. On 25 May 1944, as the breakout cracked German lines, his main thrust bent toward Rome instead of closing the Valmontone Gap to cut off the German 10th Army. That pivot allowed large German forces to slip away and build new defenses to the north. They read that decision as a gift. A commander who reached for a headline over a kill box gave professionals time to breathe and time to live. The argument over motives did not interest them. The operational consequence did. Montgomery earned a different label: safe to predict. He assembled mass, pulled artillery forward with precision, and stepped off only when control was firm. His battles in Normandy bled the enemy by design, and his pauses announced the next phase in neat blocks. When he broke his own pattern in September 1944, the risk shocked them. Market Garden asked airborne troops and a single road to carry an entire strategy. British and American paratroopers fought hard, but strong German formations near Arnhem, delays at Nijmegen, and tight drop zones combined to stop the plan on the lower Rhine. For German officers who had mapped his method, that gamble felt out of character. Harold Alexander attracted a quieter respect. In Italy, a coalition commander had to arbitrate national aims, personalities, and terrain that punished every oversimplification. He listened, shifted priorities when the ground and politics demanded it, and kept the campaign from breaking into feuds. Eisenhower stood in a category by himself. Schaff did not hold a rifle line. It held a marriage together. He balanced British insistence on a narrow thrust with American pressure for a broad front, assigned supplies to the point they would buy time, and turned quarrels into compromises. To German readers, his strength delayed their dream of an Allied split. Bradley, with First Army under Hodges, felt like a metronome. In their notes, relentless American pressure crept forward even when the ground froze and the brush shattered. A corps would grind through a forest, falter, get reinforced, and try again. The method had no flourish, but it replaced losses faster than the German reserve pool could patch holes. Courtney Hodges led the spear of that rhythm. His First Army took Aachen, pushed along the Siegfried Line, and absorbed the worst the Hurtgen could pour into a man. German observers wrote of a commander who did not scare because the system behind him refused to let him. Lucien Truscott rose in their estimation as the months wore on. Sixth Corps at Anzio learned to attack at night, to shorten pre-assault rituals, to move fast even when the ground sucked at boots. Later, as Fifth Army commander in 1945, he demanded pace and cohesion under weather and fatigue that made veterans swear under their breath. Patton eventually moved from margin to headline. On 1st August 1944, Third Army came alive and began to sprint. An armored column would overrun a map boundary before a staff officer could tape a new sheet to the table. Bridges were seized, fuel dumps raided, and the chase west and then east numbed German rear staffs. Even then, not every German officer feared the name. Many still weighed the constraints. Patton's speed depended on gasoline and weather, on air that could see and roads that could carry. In the Ardennes, winter changed those variables. Rankings hardened in late 1944 as contact multiplied. Clark gave opportunities. Montgomery gave time. Alexander gave adaptability. Eisenhower gave months. Bradley and Hodges gave a grind that could not be peeled off. Truscott gave pressure at a marching pace that ate ground and nerves. Patton gave both fear and respect once the pivot north began. Wacht am Rhein moves from paper to steel in the dark. Before dawn on 16th of December, artillery rolls across the Ardennes like a door slamming. Columns of panzers and assault guns nose into forest roads, and infantry filter through fog that blinds Allied planes. American outposts crackle with radio traffic and flare pistols arc over snow. Roadblocks fight to slow the first waves, then fall back in pieces toward towns with names that grow famous by noon. In the north, 6th Panzer Army aims past Elsenborn. In the center, Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army threads through villages. In the south, 7th Army guards the flank and probes for seams. The German promise is speed, and for hours it looks like it will buy Antwerp. Fuel crews count cans as if they are shells. Traffic control teams. Wave tanks past jackknifed trucks and patch culverts with frozen timbers. Every minute lost to a bottleneck burns a village's worth of gasoline. Schaeff reacts with shock and calculation. Eisenhower pulls commanders into Verdun on 19th of December and points north. Patton already has a plan sketched in his pocket, having ordered his staff to prepare options days earlier. 3 divisions are promised north in roughly 48 hours. Orders ricochet down Third Army's lines. On the morning of 22nd of December, armored spearheads turn off their original axes and drive into winter. Crews chip ice off tracks. Mechanics warm engines with fires under oil pans, and every bridge is tested twice before a column trusts it. Bastogne becomes a hinge. Surrounded paratroopers hold crossroads while German units push past their flanks, and both sides listen for motors in the night. The 4th Armored Division claws up frozen roads under shell bursts that kick snow into dirty clouds, stalls at blown bridges, and find side routes around burning farms. On 26 December, 4th Armored makes contact with Bastogne's defenders. The ring around the town is broken, not erased, and fighting rages on, but the narrative inside German headquarters bends. Dismissal of Patton curdles into respect, made of grudging nods and tighter belts. North of the Bulge, Montgomery pulls British units into a defensive shoulder, steadies a line, and prepares a counterstroke with methodical care. German staffers read the pattern and know they will be hit when the weather breaks and supply stacks swell. Predictable does not mean weak. It means the blow arrives when it must. In Italy, the tempo the Germans had graded plays out again. Alexander parses demands from Rome to London to Washington and keeps the front moving under mountain snow. Truscott squeezes miles out of tired divisions and shows the same urge to attack that German patrols learned to respect outside Anzio. Within German groups, muttered conversations revisit every earlier judgment. Clark is still considered an opportunity. Montgomery remains a timetable. Bradley and Hodges are the slow crusher. Alexander is the negotiator they cannot easily wrong-foot. Truscott is hunger, measured in steps. Patton, in December snow, is the problem that arrived too soon. Supply decides the arc. German formations run short of fuel and spares as Allied pipelines flex under strain and then refill. When skies clear, Allied fighter bombers rake road nets, and the calculus of ground and time shifts again. The generals who were searched in a hallway now face the bill for optimism. Model measures formations against reality and pulls back where he must. Von Rundstedt repeats what he has said all year. Call it off before it eats the last reserves. Manteuffel debts his battalions forward until they simply cannot move. In the last pushes of the Bulge, recurring truths lock into place. The Allied system tolerates mistakes because it has replacements and fuel to buffer shock. German finesse cannot conjure gasoline or fresh tracks out of frost and slogans. After the Ardennes crest broke, debriefs flowed in both directions. German commanders were questioned by their own staffs and later by captors, and Allied reports sifted comments for patterns about who scared the enemy and who did not. Records vary on the exact phrasing inside early German intelligence summaries, but the trend of their assessments stayed consistent. Those rankings mattered because they shaped where German leaders stood and where they ran. Underestimating system commanders and overvaluing individual flair led to risks that paid in days but lost in months. Procedures changed at headquarters, on both sides. German command tightened political oversight and multiplied security checks that further slowed initiative, while Allied planners leaned harder on coalition routines, logistics prioritization, and tempo as a weapon. In industrial war, the hardest opponent was the one who made your cleverness irrelevant. Speed backed by supply, beat mystique backed by nerves.